My name was Daniel Carter, the morning my mother chose a backyard barbecue over my doctoral graduation. I was 28 years old, standing alone in a narrow dressing room at Johns Hopkins, adjusting the collar of my gown in a mirror that warped slightly at the edges. Outside, I could hear the low thunder of families filling the auditorium, laughter, camera shutters, someone shouting a graduate's name like it meant everything. Inside, my phone buzzed. We already ate. Honey. I stared at the text longer than I want to admit. A second message came through. A photo. My parents' backyard. Folding tables covered in butcher paper. Ribs stacked high. Smoke curling into the late afternoon sky. My older brother, Caleb, at the grill, grinning like a campaign poster. The caption read, "Proud of our future BBQ king. Investors loved him." Not a single word about my PhD. I called. Mom. The ceremony starts in 10 minutes. Music blared behind her voice. Laughter. The sharp hiss of meat hitting flame. Don't start. Daniel. This is huge for your brother. We can stream your thing later. Your thing. My father cut in. We can't split ourselves in two. Caleb's building something real. I looked at my reflection cap. Honors courts. 8 years of research. No one in that backyard ever asked about, and felt something go quiet inside me. In that moment, I understood my role. Not the son. Not the doctor. The supporting character. That was the last call I ever made as Daniel Carter. And before I tell you what I did next and how one decision turned my family's beloved barbecue empire into the center of a public scandal, I want to know something. Where are you listening from? Because my story started in a small backyard filled with smoke, and it ended in headlines. If that phone call sounds sudden, it wasn't. It was just the first time I stopped pretending I didn't understand the pattern. I grew up in the shadow of a smoker. Carter's backyard barbecue wasn't just my parents' business. It was the axis our family rotated around. Birthdays were catered by us. Christmas meant brisket instead of turkey. Vacations were food expos. Our dinner conversations revolved around rub blends, supplier discounts, and which food blogger might show up next. And Caleb, my older brother, was the golden boy of the flame. He had charisma. He could flip a rack of ribs one-handed while cracking jokes. Customers loved him. My mother called him a natural. My father said he had instincts you can't teach. I had instincts too, just not the kind that came with applause. While Caleb learned how to charm critics, I learned how to code statistical models. While he experimented with sauces, I stayed up past midnight running infection simulations for class. I brought home science fair trophies, academic scholarships, published research. My mom would smile distractedly and say, "That's great. Daniel, hey, can you cover the register Friday? Your brother's got a tasting." In high school, I redesigned their inventory tracking system because they were losing money to waste. My dad told people Caleb was expanding operations. When I suggested stricter food safety protocols, separate prep stations, temperature logging, Caleb laughed. "We're not a lab. Man, relax." I wasn't jealous of him. I was exhausted. Exhausted from being introduced as Caleb's brother who's good with computers. Exhausted from watching my parents beam when he burned a new glaze, but barely look up when I explained my research on foodborne illness transmission. The irony was almost funny. I was studying how outbreaks start. And every summer, I watched my own family cut corners, because we've always done it this way. But none of that felt explosive at the time. It felt like background noise. Small cuts. Manageable disappointments. The graduation wasn't a betrayal born in a single afternoon. It was confirmation. 28 years of being the reliable one. The quiet one. The one who would understand. When my mother texted, "We already ate," what I finally heard was this: "You will never be the main event." And for the first time in my life, I believed her. I lined up for my doctorate alone. The hallway behind the auditorium curved like a slow-moving river of black gowns and nervous smiles. Families clustered at the edges, mothers fixing tassels, fathers adjusting collars, siblings holding bouquets too big to manage. Phones were already out, cameras ready. I stood there with my diploma folder tucked under my arm and no one to hand my coat to. A classmate nudged me lightly. "Your family running late." I gave the kind of smile you learn when explaining would take too long. "They're watching online." She frowned. "That sucks. You carried half our stats seminar. They should be front row." Her words hit harder than she meant them to. Have you ever had a near stranger recognize your value faster than your own family ever did? We filed into our seats. The empty row behind me felt louder than the crowd. Every time applause erupted for someone else, I told myself it didn't matter. I told myself I was too old to need cheering. Then my name echoed through the arena. Daniel Carter, Doctor of Public Health, Epidemiology and Data Science. For a split second, I imagined hearing my father whistle the way he did at Caleb's competitions. Imagined my mom standing, waving, nothing, just polite applause from faculty, a few cheers from classmates. I walked across the stage steady, jaw tight. The dean shook my hand firmly and leaned in close for the photograph. "Congratulations, doctor," he murmured. "Your modeling work is going to save lives." That sentence cracked something open inside me. Not because it was praise, because it was true. I had built something real, something measurable, something that mattered beyond applause and smoke. When I returned to my seat, I checked my phone once. The Carter family group chat was exploding with barbecue photos, Caleb in front of a banner that read, "Caleb Carter, King of the Flame." Comments from relatives, fire emojis, "So proud." National spotlight next. Not one mention of the ceremony. I didn't type anything. Instead, I opened a bookmarked page I'd saved months ago and never dared to touch. Petition for legal name change. The form looked sterile, bureaucratic, final. For years, I'd scribbled another name in notebook margins during lectures. A name that wasn't tied to a backyard smoker. A name that didn't come with comparison. I typed it slowly. Adrian Cole. My hands didn't shake. I filled in the fields. Date of birth. Current name. Reason for change. Under explanation. I wrote, personal and professional identity. What I meant was, I am done being the background character. I submitted the preliminary paperwork before I could talk myself out of it. By the time the ceremony ended and graduates disappeared into crowds of hugs and photos, I stepped outside into the late afternoon sun feeling lighter than I had in years. Not happy, not vindicated, just clear. Rachel didn't die in a bathroom stall. Daniel didn't collapse on a stage. But something did end that day. And Adrian, the version of me who no longer begged to be seen, walked off that campus alone. For the first time, it didn't feel like abandonment. It felt like rebirth. The paperwork took 3 weeks to process. 3 weeks of signatures, courthouse appointments, and answering a judge's neutral questions about why a 28-year-old man with no criminal record wanted to sever himself from his own name. Personal and professional identity. I repeated calmly. The gavel came down. Just like that, Daniel Carter became Adrian Cole. No fireworks. No dramatic music. Just ink drying on a document that felt heavier than any diploma. That same week, I posted a single photo from graduation on a private account. Cap off. Gown slightly wrinkled. Empty stage behind me. Caption, coming soon. A few friends were confused, then excited. One message stood out. Jenna, my grad school friend, who'd moved to Seattle, texted, "So, does this mean you're finally saying yes to Northwatch?" I had applied months earlier to Northwatch Analytics, a company specializing in real-time outbreak detection. They'd been impressed with my dissertation on predictive modeling for foodborne illness clusters. They'd offered an interview after graduation, before the barbecue call. Seattle felt far. After it, it felt necessary. I replied, "I'm in." The formal offer came the next morning. Senior epidemiological data scientist. Relocation package included. It felt like oxygen. I informed my family with a short email. I graduated. I've legally changed my name for professional reasons and accepted a position in Seattle with a public health analytics firm. Wishing you the best with the restaurant. Polita. Controlled. Final. My mother responded 2 days later. Seattle. That's a big move. We thought you'd come home and help Caleb scale operations. He could really use your numbers brain. Anyway, congrats. We're swamped prepping for the summer festival. My father reacted with a thumbs up emoji in the family chat. Caleb said nothing. If you've ever waited for someone to fight for you and realized they won't, you know that kind of silence. I packed my life into 3 suitcases. On my last night in Baltimore, I wrote a letter I never mailed. One day you'll realize your son became a doctor and you weren't there. One day you'll need me, and I may not answer. I signed it. Adrian. Folded it. Closed the journal. When the plane lifted into gray morning sky, I didn't look back at the city. I looked forward. And for the first time, I wasn't leaving to prove anything. I was leaving to become someone. Seattle didn't care who my brother was. It didn't care about brisket trophies or backyard legends. It cared about data. Northwatch Analytics occupied 2 glass floors overlooking Elliott Bay, whiteboards covered in equations, dashboards glowing with live feeds from hospitals, inspection databases, pharmacy purchases, and anonymized social media trends. On my first day, my manager, a sharp-eyed woman with permanent coffee in hand, told me, "We hunt patterns before they become headlines." That sentence felt like home. I immersed myself in streams of emergency room admissions, restaurant inspection reports, school absentee spikes, wastewater monitoring dashboards. My dissertation on foodborne illness modeling wasn't theoretical here. It was practical, actionable. For the first time in my life, my value was measured in clarity, not charisma. No one asked me to refill sauce bottles. No one introduced me as somebody's brother. When I presented a model predicting seasonal contamination risks in small restaurant chains, the room leaned in. "Can you scale that statewide?" someone asked. Yes, I could. Months passed. I learned to appreciate the quiet hum of rain against office windows instead of the hiss of smokers at dawn. My coworkers knew me only as Adrian, the guy who could stare at a messy dataset until it confessed something dangerous. When they asked about my family, I kept it simple. They run restaurants back east. We're not close. Seattle gave me something I hadn't realized I was starving for. Neutral ground. No history. No hierarchy. No comparisons. Just competence. I was building systems that flagged anomalies before they spiraled tight onset clusters. Symptom correlations. Geographic overlaps. We weren't reacting to disasters. We were intercepting them. It felt clean. Logical. Earned. For the first time, my work didn't compete with anyone else's spotlight. It stood on its own. And that's exactly why. When the first red flags appeared on my screen one Tuesday afternoon, I noticed them immediately. The alert came in at 2. A small cluster, at first severe gastrointestinal admissions, across 3 neighboring counties. Not unusual for late summer, but the onset windows were tight. Too tight. Symptoms aggressive. Lab notes, beginning to mention E. coli, oethundrofemtioshu, and salmonella hits. I leaned closer to the screen. "Hey, let you seeing this?" Jenna rolled her chair over as I expanded the map. Red dots pulsed across the interface like warning lights. "Probably seasonal," she said. "Maybe," I answered, already filtering intake reports. The common exposure field caught my eye. Restaurant chain listed in multiple patient interviews. I pulled it into a separate query, and my stomach dropped. Ironhearth Smokehouse. For a second, my brain refused to connect the dots. Different name, different state. But I knew the ownership structure. I'd seen expansion plans years ago. Investors, franchising, rebranding for national growth. Ironhearth was the West Coast arm of my family's empire. My brother's expansion project. I didn't speak for a full 5 seconds. "You okay?" Jenna asked. I nodded once, then zoomed deeper. Patient after patient had eaten at separate Ironhearth locations within days of symptom onset. Cross-county exposure. Shared suppliers. Same protein items. Brisket. Pulled pork. House law. I escalated to my manager immediately. Within hours, we built a preliminary model showing statistically significant clustering tied to Ironhearth locations. It wasn't a coincident spike. It was an outbreak. The state health department requested full datasets the next morning. That night, I couldn't sleep. Instead, I lay in the dark, replaying memories I'd buried. Watching my brother slap raw meat onto prep boards. Watching line cooks skip glove changes during rushes. Hearing my father say, "We've been doing this 20 years. Nobody's died. Nobody's died." By the end of the week, the red dots multiplied. More ER visits. More lab confirmations. Pediatric cases appearing. Pediatric. I opened social media monitoring feeds. Customers posting about violent symptoms. Parents asking if anyone else's kid had been hospitalized after eating there. My chest felt tight, not from anger. Not yet. From recognition. I had modeled outbreaks like this in simulations. This is how they start. Fast growth. Denial. PR spin before accountability. The health department flagged our analysis as high confidence probable source. Probably. Soon to be confirmed. I stared at the name on the screen again. Ironhearth Smokehouse. My brother's pride. My parents' legacy. My childhood. And for the first time since I left, the life I'd built in Seattle and the life I'd walked away from collided head-on. This wasn't about favoritism anymore. This wasn't about a missed graduation. People were in hospitals, and the data was pointing straight at my family. There's a moment when you realize you're holding a match near gasoline and the gasoline has your last name on it. 3 versions of me started arguing at once. The son said, "Call them, warn them, Give them a chance to fix this quietly. The scientists said. Protocol. Documentation. Neutrality. People are already sick. The hurt younger brother, the one who stood alone at graduation, said nothing. He just watched. I wish I could tell you the decision came easily. It didn't. For a week, I functioned on autopilot at work. I refined models, cleaned datasets, built visual timelines, linking symptom onset to specific iron hearth locations. Every new lab confirmation tightened the case. Coli set, Salmonella enterica, hospitalizations increasing. Then the call came that ended any illusion I still had. A pediatric ICU physician requested direct access to our clustering analysis. We have 3 kids on ventilators, he said. Same strain, same exposure window. We need to know if this is bigger than we think. 3 kids. On ventilators. After I hung up, I sat still for maybe 30 seconds. Then I walked into my manager's office and closed the door. I need to disclose a conflict of interest, I said. She gestured for me to sit. My parents founded the original restaurant. My brother runs the expansion chain. Iron Hearth is theirs. There it was. Out loud. She didn't react dramatically. No raised voice. No accusation. Thank you for telling me, she said evenly. Effective immediately. You're recused from policy recommendations and enforcement communications. You'll continue technical analysis, but you won't be the decision maker. Professional. Clean. Then she leaned back slightly. As a human being, not your supervisor, do they know? Do you want to tell them? I thought about that bathroom stall, about the barbecue photo, about being told Caleb was building something real. Then I thought about 3 children on ventilators. I'll call, I said, not to protect them, to give them a chance to shut down voluntarily before the state forces it. She nodded once. That's your call as a son. We'll handle our side. I stepped into the hallway and dialed my parents' number for the first time in almost a year. My mother answered. Daniel, sorry. Adrienne, she corrected awkwardly. What a surprise. I need to talk to Dad and Caleb too, I said. Put me on speaker. There was shuffling, background noise. I recognized the hum of a kitchen. My father's voice came on. Impatient. What is it? I'm calling about Iron Hearth, I said. Have you had serious illness complaints? A pause. Couple trolls online. Caleb cut in. Happens when you grow fast. This isn't trolling, I said. There's a confirmed cluster. Coli and salmonella. Multi-county. Pediatric ICU cases. Silence. Then my father scoffed. You're getting this from where? Twitter. I work in outbreak analytics, I said flatly. The state is building a case. If you shut down temporarily, deep clean, retrain staff, audit suppliers, you might limit damage. Shut down. Caleb's voice shot up. We have investors flying in next week. This isn't about optics, I snapped. It's about people and hospitals. My mother's tone shifted tight. Defensive. Are you sure this isn't personal? After everything that happened last year. There it was. You think this is about graduation? I asked quietly. You've always resented Caleb started. I am telling you, children are on ventilators. I cut in. This stops now, or the state will stop it for you. My father's voice hardened. We built this from nothing. You don't get to waltz in from Seattle and destroy it with spreadsheets. I'm not destroying anything, I said. Your safety practices are. Don't lecture us about our own kitchen. Caleb barked. You've never worked a real rush. I laughed once. It wasn't humor. I worked your rushes for 12 years. You're overreacting, my father said. We pass inspections. You were warned internally about cross-contamination risks. I said, fix it, voluntarily. And if we don't, Caleb challenged, then the health department will make that decision for you. Silence again. Heavy. My mother finally spoke. Softer. If this goes public, it will ruin your brother. I swallowed. If this continues, it could ruin families. My father ended the call. No promise to review procedures. No plan to close. Just ego. I stood there with the phone still in my hand long after the line went dead. Have you ever watched someone choose pride over the simplest path to accountability? That was the moment something permanent shifted. I contacted a public interest law firm the next morning, not to attack, but to protect myself legally. I documented the disclosure call, time-stamped everything, submitted written confirmation of my recusal internally. No manipulation, no sabotage, just truth. Recorded. The state health department escalated inspections within days. And this time, when the red dots expanded across my screen, I didn't hesitate. The sun had spoken. They chose not to listen. From that point forward, I stood exactly where I should have been from the beginning, on the side of the data, on the side of the people getting hurt, even if that meant standing against my own blood. The state moved faster than my family expected. Within 2 weeks, inspectors had quietly visited multiple Iron Hearth locations. Samples collected, staff interviewed, temperature logs reviewed, supply chains traced. The outbreak was no longer theoretical. Local news stations began running cautious segments. Popular regional barbecue chain under investigation. Following multi-county illness reports, my brother responded the only way he knew how. With a camera, he posted a video standing in front of the flagship location. Apron on, flames roaring theatrically behind him. "We take food safety seriously at Iron Hearth," he said with that practiced grin. "We feed our own family here. Don't believe online rumors. When you grow fast, people try to tear you down." The comments flooded with support. Fire emojis. "Tell them. Chef, haters gonna hate." I watched it from my desk in Seattle. Jaw tight, spin always comes before consequences. Internally, the health department labeled the outbreak probable source confirmed. They were building toward public action. They just needed final lab sequencing to connect all cases definitively. Then my mother emailed me. Subject line: Thanksgiving. The message was carefully worded. "We know things have been tense, but family is family. We're hosting a big community cookout instead of a traditional dinner this year. City council members, press, food bloggers. It would mean a lot if you came. It'd show everyone we're united. And honestly, good PR wouldn't hurt right now. You're a doctor. People trust that." There it was. Not "we're scared." Not "we should have listened." Good PR. They didn't want reconciliation. They wanted a shield. I read the email 3 times before leaning back in my chair. If you've ever watched people double down when the ground is already cracking beneath them, you know the feeling. Part of me wanted to delete it. Another part recognized something else. Opportunity. If they wanted to stand on a stage and declare themselves safe, surrounded by cameras and officials, then that stage might become the exact place the truth landed. I contacted the law firm, coordinated with the health department. I didn't influence the investigation. I didn't push timelines. But when they informed me formal shutdown orders were imminent and would likely be served publicly to prevent noncompliance, they asked one question: "Do you want to be present?" Not for revenge, for closure. I replied to my mother's email with 2 words: "I'll come." Thanksgiving arrived under a cold gray sky. Smoke hung low over the parking lot as I stepped out of my rental car and faced the building I'd grown up in. Banners read: "Commitment to excellence. Commitment to safety." Hand sanitizer stations lined the entrance. The theater of compliance. My brother spotted me from the stage setup in the parking lot. Custom chef coat embroidered with his name. Adrian made it. He boomed into the microphone. "My brother, the data guy. He'll tell you science is on our side." The crowd clapped. Cameras turned. I stepped forward. Expression neutral. For the first time in my life, I wasn't there to support the illusion. I was there to watch it collapse. The parking lot looked like a county fair wrapped in denial. String lights stretched between light poles. A live band played near the smoker rigs. Reporters hovered with microphones, tucked discreetly at their sides, pretending this was just another feel-good local feature. My brother thrived in it. He moved across the stage like he owned the air, laughing, shaking hands with city council members, flipping brisket for the cameras. "Transparency matters," he said into the mic. "We've passed inspections. We're stronger than ever." Stronger than ever. I stood off to the side, hands in my coat pockets, watching people line up for free samples. Families. Trusting. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. "They're pulling in now. 2 minutes." The state investigator. The band finished a song. Applause rippled. My brother wiped his hands theatrically on a towel. "And before we carve the holiday brisket," he grinned, "I want to introduce someone special. My brother, Dr. Adrian Cole. Proof that real science backs Iron Hearth." A spotlight swung toward me. The irony was almost elegant. I stepped onto the stage. Polite applause. A few cameras zoomed in. My mother stood near the stairs, eyes shining with expectation. "Smile. Be useful." Before I could speak, the music cut abruptly. Not a fade. A hard stop. Heads turned. A group of officials in state jackets moved through the crowd with deliberate calm. Behind them, news cameras lifted instinctively. The lead investigator climbed the stage steps without hesitation. "Good afternoon," she said into a portable mic. voice steady. I'm here on behalf of the State Department of Health regarding the ongoing multi-county outbreak of E. coli and salmonella. The crowd shifted uneasily. My brother's grin faltered. After a comprehensive investigation, she continued, Iron Hearth Smokehouse has been identified as a primary source. Effective immediately. All locations are ordered to cease operations, pending further notice. A sound rolled through the parking lot, confusion first. Then outrage. What? Are you serious? My kid was sick last week. My mother stepped forward. Pale? There must be some mistake. We're a family business. We have lab sequencing, supplier tracing, and documented warnings that were not addressed. The investigator replied calmly. Failure to comply will result in additional fines and potential criminal liability. She handed my brother the formal shutdown order. The paper trembled in his hand. Cameras zoomed closer. For the first time in his life, there was no grill to hide behind. He turned to me, fury flashing raw and unfiltered. You did this. No microphone now. Just accusation. I didn't bring them here. I said evenly. Your food safety practices did. You set this up. He hissed. You've been waiting for this since graduation. There it was again. Always back to that. This isn't about me, I said, loud enough for the nearby microphones to catch. It's about the families whose kids are in the ICU. The words landed harder than I expected. A reporter leaned closer. Is that true? Someone in the crowd shouted. Yes. The investigator answered before my brother could spin it. Pediatric cases are among those confirmed. My father stepped between us. Face flushed. You're siding with strangers over your own blood. I looked out at the crowd, parents holding children closer. Employees whispering in shock. Cameras recording every second. Those strangers trusted you. I said. You treated that trust like it was disposable. Silence. Thick. Unavoidable. My voice stayed steady. You skipped my doctorate to celebrate barbecue. A few people murmured. And now your barbecue is the reason someone else's kid might not make it to theirs. That was the moment the illusion cracked publicly. No quick comeback. No deflection. Just the reality hanging in cold November air. The investigator instructed staff to begin immediate closure procedures. Officials moved toward the entrances. Employees stood frozen, unsure whether to argue or comply. The band packed up quietly. Reporters circled my brother, firing questions he couldn't charm away. Were you aware of contamination complaints? Did you ignore prior warnings? Why stay open during investigation? My mother looked smaller than I'd ever seen her. My father said nothing. My brother stared at the shutdown order like it might change if he blinked hard enough. I stepped off the stage without another word. Not triumphant. Not smiling. Just finished? The public humiliation they feared at my graduation had finally arrived. Only this time. The audience was bigger, and the applause was replaced with consequences. The headlines hit within hours. Beloved regional barbecue chain linked to multi-county outbreak. Children hospitalized after dining at Iron Hearth. State orders, immediate shutdown. The narrative shifted fast. At first, it was shock. Then anger. Then investigation. Former employees began speaking. Anonymously, at first, then on record. Line cooks described being told to keep the line moving, even when meat hadn't reached safe internal temperatures. Managers admitted temperature logs were sometimes filled out at the end of shifts instead of in real time. Suppliers confirmed prior complaints about inconsistent cold chain storage. What had once been dismissed as isolated incidents became pattern. Civil lawsuits stacked up quickly. Families of hospitalized patients, including 2 of the pediatric ICU cases. The health department levied fines that made the shutdown order look gentle by comparison. Inspection records from previous years were re-examined publicly. Small violations that had once been written off as routine suddenly read differently in context. Reputation evaporates faster than smoke. My brother lost his sponsorship deals within a week. A televised cooking segment he'd secured for the spring was postponed indefinitely. Food festival bookings were quietly withdrawn. The awards that once lined the flagship restaurant wall were rescinded after ethics reviews. Investors pulled out. Locations that weren't directly implicated closed preemptively. Within months, Iron Hearth filed for bankruptcy protection. My parents sold 2 properties to cover legal fees and settlements. The original backyard location, the one that had once felt invincible, closed indefinitely. People asked me if I felt vindicated. The truth is more complicated. There was no cinematic satisfaction. No victory speech. What I felt was weight. Heavy, sobering weight. Because behind every headline was someone who had been sick. someone who had trusted the brand, someone whose hospital bills weren't theoretical. The whistleblower protections activated quietly behind the scenes because I had disclosed my conflict early, documented everything, and followed protocol. I was legally shielded from retaliation claims. More than that, I qualified for a portion of the financial penalties recovered through early analytic intervention. When the law firm sent me the final figure, I had to reread the email 3 times. It was more money than I'd ever had attached to my own name. Not my parents, not my brothers. I considered the obvious symbols: new car, downtown condo upgrade, something loud and visible. But the image that kept replaying in my head wasn't Thanksgiving. It was that ICU doctor's voice. 3 kids on ventilators. So, instead, I built something. The Line Cook Project, a nonprofit focused on food safety training, anonymous reporting systems, and legal support for restaurant workers who spotted dangerous practices but were too afraid to speak up. We partnered with Northwatch to develop accessible safety modules rooted in real outbreak data. We ran workshops across multiple states. We provided micro-grants for independent kitchen audits. We built a hotline staffed by public health volunteers. Quiet infrastructure, the kind that prevents crises before they trend. There's a particular irony in watching the empire that treated you like background labor end up funding protections for the very workers it once pressured to cut corners. But it wasn't revenge. It was correction. The shutdown wasn't the end of my story. It was the end of denial. And for the first time in my life, my work wasn't happening in the shadow of smoke. It was happening in the open. The call started about a month after the bankruptcy filing. At first, I let them go to voicemail. My mother's voice swung between sharp and fragile. "You didn't have to let it go this far. We're still your family. Call me back." My father left exactly one message. "You destroyed your brother. I hope it was worth it." I deleted none of them, but I didn't respond. Then one afternoon, a letter arrived. Act wallpaper. My name written carefully across the front. Adrienne Cole. Inside, my mother's handwriting looped across 3 pages. They were closing the original location permanently. The legal fees were worse than they'd expected. Caleb wasn't speaking to anyone. He'd started drinking. He said the media ruined him. Somewhere near the bottom, almost squeezed between paragraphs about finances and reputation, was a single line. "Maybe we should have listened to you earlier. Maybe we should have gone to your graduation." I read that sentence 3 times, not because it healed anything, because it confirmed something. They knew, not fully, not deeply, but enough to recognize the fork in the road where everything could have gone differently. There was no apology for dismissing my warnings, no acknowledgement of years spent sidelining me, no admission that pride had outweighed public safety. Just, maybe. I sat at my kitchen table in Seattle, rain tapping softly against the windows, and let the quiet settle. I realized something that surprised me. I wasn't angry anymore. Anger had fueled the confrontation. It had sharpened my voice when I needed it steady. But what replaced it wasn't bitterness. It was boundary. I wrote back 2 days later. "I'm sorry for the pain everyone is going through. I never wanted anyone harmed. But people were already being harmed. I chose to stand with them instead of protecting a lie. I'm open to conversations that are honest and take responsibility. I'm not open to pretending none of this happened." I signed it simply. Adrienne. Know your son. Know with love. Just my name. I never received a reply. And for the first time in my life, silence didn't feel like rejection. It felt like peace. There's something no one tells you when you grow up as the responsible one in a family that worships someone louder. You will spend years thinking that if you just achieve enough, let's succeed enough, sacrifice enough, eventually, they'll see you. Eventually, they'll clap. But applause is not proof of worth. Integrity is. Family is not a lifetime immunity card against consequences. Blood is not permission to harm people and call it loyalty. And love that demands you shrink so someone else can shine brighter is not love. It's control disguised as tradition. I didn't expose my family to win. I didn't stand on that stage at Thanksgiving to humiliate anyone. I stood there because children were in hospital beds and the data was clear. Because silence would have made me complicit. Because the version of me who once stood alone at graduation deserved better than to become the man who looked away. Now, when I walk into Northwatch and review a flagged anomaly, I don't think about backyard smokers or missed ceremonies. I think about prevention, about quiet systems working before harm spreads, about line cooks who now have a number to call if they're told to serve unsafe food, about the fact that truth, when spoken early enough, saves lives. If you're listening to this and you've ever felt invisible in your own family, like your milestones are optional but someone else's spotlight is sacred, hear me clearly. You are allowed to stop chasing approval from people who refuse to see you. You are allowed to draw a line. You are allowed to choose integrity over comfort. And if you ever find yourself standing between protecting a reputation and protecting people, choose the people, even if the reputation shares your last name. Now I want to ask you something. If you were in my place, would you have exposed the restaurant? Or would you have stayed quiet to keep the peace? And have you ever had to choose between doing the right thing and protecting someone you love? Tell me your story. Because sometimes the hardest battles aren't fought against strangers. They're fought across a dinner table,